Which of these 360 cameras is the best option to buy right now? The DJI Osmo 360, the Insta360 X5, or the GoPro Max 2? In this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive look at which of these 360 cameras is the best option. I've shot videos and photos side by side. We're going to be taking a close look at those videos, seeing which ones perform best, taking a look at the specs of each camera, the software, the hardware, which one has the best and easiest editing workflow, and overall what these cameras are good and not so good at. The GoPro Max and the DJI Osmo 360 have been recently released just in the last month or so, and the X5 was released earlier this year, so there is finally some competition in this space, and there are some significant differences between these three cameras, so it's important for you to watch this video to see what you're getting, which one's going to be best for you depending on what you want to use these cameras for. Starting off with the newest of these cameras, the GoPro Max 2. All of these 360 cameras can shoot 8K 360 video. However, GoPro claims that the Max 2 can shoot 8K at 20% higher resolution, as it doesn't require any upscaling. It can also shoot 5.6K at 60 frames per second and 4K at 100 frames per second. It also has a single lens mode, which shoots 4K at 60 frames per second. It features 10-bit video with GP log, so a log color profile for color grading later in post. It can shoot up to 120 megabits per second. However, if you have access to GoPro Labs, then that can reach up to 300 megabits per second. For photos, it can shoot 29 megapixel 360 photos. Probably the most unique feature of the GoPro Max 2 is its twist and go user replaceable lenses, so you don't need any tools. You can literally just twist, remove and replace your lenses within a couple of seconds. Out of the three cameras, the GoPro Max lenses are by far the easiest to replace. Now, to save time, I'm not going to go through every single spec, but you can see the other specs listed here. Moving on to the DJI Osmo 360, which can also shoot 8K 360 video. However, it can shoot up to 50 frames per second in 8K. That's the only one of these 360 cameras that can do that. The others are limited to 8K at 30 frames per second. It can also shoot 6K 100 frames per second and 4K at 120 frames per second. The single lens mode can shoot 4K at 120 frames per second and has a boost mode for a 170-degree field of view. For photos, it can shoot 120 megapixel 360 stills. It also shoots 10-bit color video with DJI's D-Log profile for color correction later in post. And once again, I'm listing all of the other specs here. Take a look at your leisure. And last but not least, we're looking at the Insta360 X5, and these are the top specs for this camera. Once again, shooting 8K 360 video at a maximum of 30 frames per second, 5.7K at 60 frames per second, and 4K at 120 frames per second. The single lens mode can shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, but also features a super slow motion 4K at 120 frames per second if shooting with the bullet time mode. Photos, you can shoot 72 megapixel 360 images, also with HDR and RAW. The X5 also features user replaceable lenses. However, unlike the GoPro, this does require a bit more effort, requiring you to use a kit and some tools. So certainly a lot easier than sending it away, but a little bit more difficult than the twist and go option with the GoPro Max 2. And once again, here are the other specs listed. So those are just the headline specs of these cameras. It doesn't really show you exactly what is going to be better in reality, but let's now start taking a look at some video comparisons. I've went out and shot a fair few comparisons in different environments. You're going to be using these cameras 99% of the time to shoot videos, so let's see how they compare. Now, as I mentioned, all of these cameras can shoot 8K 360 videos. However, that does not make them equal. For a start, the GoPro Max 2 actually can shoot slightly higher resolution because of how 360 cameras work. Sometimes pixels overlap, the cameras sometimes upscale, and Insta360 and DJI also count some non-usable pixels in their 8K formats. And it is accurate to say with the GoPro Max 2 that the 8K, all of those pixels are actually used in the visible image. So you do get slightly more pixels in your final video compared to the other two cameras. Now, that might not mean much to you. What can make a massive difference is the sensor size, and that is also very different between these three cameras. The DJI Osmo 360 has the largest sensors. It features two dual 1-inch sensors, and the larger the sensor, the more light the camera can take in, therefore it usually captures more detail, better colors. So ideally we want larger sensors as possible. The Insta360 is next with sensors that are 1-1.28 inches, so slightly smaller than the DJI's 1-inch sensors. And finally, with the smallest sensors, the GoPro has 1-1.23 inch sensors, which are pretty small. These are the same size sensors as cameras that were being released 4 years ago, so there has not really been a sensor size upgrade compared to the previous generation in the Max 2. Now, what does this mean in reality? Does the extra resolution kind of make up for that? Well, looking at these side-by-side comparisons, we're kind of focusing on daylight comparisons now. There is some difference. You can clearly see with color technology, with sharpness, you can clearly see there is a difference between each three. In my opinion, I find in most of these examples, the DJI Osmo 360 produces the sharpest images, sharpest video. Certainly I can pinpoint more details. However, the DJI color technology I don't think is the best. It always seems to produce a slightly yellowish, warmish tinge, which I don't particularly like. Obviously, this can be corrected, but just out of the camera, I don't particularly like the color technology, but definitely the sharpest and capturing the most details, I think, out of these three. The Insta360 X5 are producing pretty good quality. However, the smaller sensor size and the lack of 10-bit video, the X5 is the only one of these that doesn't shoot 10-bit video, and I think it does show a little bit, but I don't think it's particularly unattractive and certainly captures quite a good level of detail and dynamic range. And finally, the GoPro Max 2, in these favorable conditions, the Max 2 captures really colorful images. I think the color technology is pretty much the best out of these three in the Max 2, certainly the most realistic, comparing what I saw in real life to how it's turning out in these videos. But does this boost in resolution that they claim make much of a difference? I don't think it does, to be honest. If we zoom in, I'm not sure I'm really detecting a massive difference. Maybe in some scenarios it's slightly sharper. So just looking at these daylight comparisons, I think there are pros and cons to all three of these. It's really, really hard to choose, to be honest. It's going to be a matter of preference. Now, in these comparisons, we're really just looking at video quality. We're not doing much movement, which doesn't really make much of a difference. In all three cases, these cameras have amazing stabilization. They can all be used for action shots. They can all be attached to, a bike, a motorbike, your chest, a car, and they're going to be able to handle any kind of movement pretty much perfectly. They're so much better than any other kind of action camera. But just in terms of video quality, I do think the DJI produces, I guess, technically the highest quality video. But moving on to night video, now this is where there is a significant difference. And unfortunately, this is where the GoPro Max 2 really, really struggles. Because of these smaller sensors, the Max 2 just is not good at shooting low light video at all, even if we're in an environment where there's lots of artificial light. I mean, to be honest, none of these cameras or 360 cameras in general are going to perform well in truly low light environments where there is no artificial light. But the DJI Osmo 360 and the X5 do both have specific modes for shooting in low light where the camera technology does kind of boost the quality and try and get rid of as much noise as possible. And I think in both cases, these work really well. If you're in a city environment where there's artificial light, the Osmo 360 and X5 can perform really, really well. You can see here some side-by-sides. The DJI should really perform the best as it has the largest sensors. But I think the X5 with its pure video mode, that's the mode that you use to shoot in low light, performs the best. I really think it does. I think it reduces the highlights, overexposure, and just captures more details with these bright, artificial lights. I think that's the best way to use these cameras in these environments, and the Max 2 handles those the best. So looking at those video comparisons, I mean, it's kind of a toss-up, to be honest. Again, I said before, it's going to come down to preference in some ways. Certainly the DJI shooting the sharpest video with probably the most details captured, but yeah, the yellowish tinge it produces I'm not a fan of. Overall, the color technology in the Max 2 probably the best in daylight, but performs quite poorly in low light conditions. And the X5 kind of a good all-rounder, but I think performs best in those low light scenarios. But yeah, the lack of 10-bit video kind of costing it when it comes to capturing colors. Certainly if you wanted to do any post-production editing on a program program like Premiere Pro, the 8-bit video is going to limit to what you can do. The lightest of these cameras is the DJI Osmo 360, but only slightly heavier is the GoPro Max 2. Then we have a 200 grams, the Insta360 X5 as the heaviest. Now, you can see that there's a similarity in the design and style of the Max 2 and the DJI, this kind of square design, the more rectangular candy bar shape of the X5. There's some pros and cons to both of these designs. Firstly, the square design is more compact, probably works better on a helmet or chest mount, and more easily fits in a pocket or a kind of case, and maybe works better with more range of accessories that aren't designed specifically for the camera. The downside to the square design is primarily the smaller screen, harder to control your camera, and certainly harder to preview what you're shooting. The longer, larger screen of the X5 makes it easier to preview your 360 footage, makes it easier to see more of what you're shooting in the 360 format. Really what matters about the design is durability. Now, all of these cameras have very vulnerable lenses, and by vulnerable I mean they stick out. They all feature fisheye lenses, and if you drop your camera, if it falls, the chances of the lenses getting scratched, damaged, completely broken are pretty high. And once that happens, the camera is non-functional. It's going to really damage and interfere with the quality of your video. Now, the GoPro is the best of these cameras for this issue because you can literally just twist and replace these lenses. So if you happen to drop your camera on a mountain bike range and you smash one of the lenses, if you brought along some spare lenses, with the GoPro Max 2, you could just literally replace them there and then, no questions asked, and continue shooting. The Insta360 also has replaceable lenses, but you can't replace them that easily. You require a kit to do that. It features gloves, it features a suction device, it features very cloths, and you have to, it takes about, it's not difficult, but it takes a good 5 or 10 minutes to do it, and you really need a sterile surface in a calm, flat environment and with not much humidity. And last but not least, the DJI Osmo 360 lenses are not replaceable by the user. If you broke them, you would have to send the camera away to get repaired, and that will probably be quite expensive and take a long time. So in terms of using these cameras as action cameras, I mean, really, the GoPro Max is, in terms of design, the most action camera friendly because you can just replace the lenses super quickly and fairly inexpensively. And that is why the GoPro has the smaller sensors. It sacrifices some video quality to be able to replace these lenses really quickly, and that is why the DJI has the highest quality video with the larger sensors, but it sacrifices the ability to not be able to replace these lenses. So that's the kind of payoff you're getting, and that's the decision you'll have to make of what kind of videos are you going to be making. Looking at the single lens options of these cameras, because let's not forget that all three of them can, in all three cases, you can utilize just one lens out of your camera to shoot single lens non-360 video. So in all three cases, you're basically getting two cameras in one, a 360 camera and a normal action camera. We can look at some side-by-side comparisons of the single lens mode in each camera here, but the DJI Osmo 360 has the highest resolution at the highest frame rate, whereas the other two are limited to 4K at 60 frames per second. In all three cases, you do get a super wide angle view mode, which would be perfect for POV shots if you had your camera chest mounted and you want to record yourself cycling or on your motorbike. This would be the mode you'd use in all three, and you can see the different field of view options here. While these single lens modes in all three of these cameras is useful, they're not going to replace dedicated action cameras like a GoPro Hero or a DJI Action 5. They're not going to be as high quality as those dedicated action cameras, but they're definitely worth using if you want to mix up some standard video and 360 video in one camera. Now let's move on to talking about something that's very important for 360 cameras, and that's software, because it really doesn't matter how good your hardware is when you're using a 360 camera. If the software is not there, by software I mean editing, the app desktop editing. If they are not easy to use, complicated, not effective, then you're not going to be able to use your cameras very well. In all three cases, the app for each camera is good. Certainly you can, in all three cases, reframe your videos very easily. But by far the winner in terms of the app that comes with these cameras is the Insta360 X5. The Insta360 app is by far the most comprehensive, has the most editing modes, makes use of 360 videos, makes it easier, has the most automatic editing options. It has at least twice as much functionality as the GoPro and DJI app options. Now, I can't go into every single option in all of these apps in this video because then this video would be an hour long. But take my word for it, there is just simply more to do in the X5 app than the others. The only downside of that is that there is quite a large learning curve for the X5 app, and it does take a while to work out where everything is, how to use everything. It can be a little bit overwhelming. The DJI app is the next most effective. It has the next best level of automatic editing and features, and certainly a lot more streamlined and easier to get your head around than the Insta360 app, and has a more traditional editor, whereas the Insta360 app is really pushing for AI and automatic editing, which I don't particularly like. That's not so much of a feature of the DJI. It does really expect you to work out how to do it yourself. But I think when it comes to 360 video, doing it yourself is important, and it just gives you more control. And that's why we're using these cameras, to have control of pointing first, shooting later, that kind of stuff. The GoPro app is, I think, probably the least well developed out of the three. Probably the most frustrating thing about this app is that some of the features are locked behind a subscription. For example, the ability to speed up your video, that's locked behind a subscription, whereas that's not the case for the others. The features that it does have, the reframing center, and the ability to combine and add transitions and add text, that's all good. It all works really fluidly, really smoothly. You can very quickly and easily create some really nice looking videos with your GoPro app. But any more advanced stuff just isn't quite there yet. And probably the most frustrating thing actually is the fact you need to download your videos to your phone or to the subscription cloud service before you start editing. Whereas with the other cameras, you can just connect your phone wirelessly and edit without having to transfer to your phone. So I've already got a full tutorial of the Insta360 app on this channel, and I will be doing full tutorials of the other two. So if you want a more detailed explanation, look at the software for these cameras, check out those videos. The desktop editing software is pretty much the same story for these cameras. The Insta360 Studio, by far the most advanced, by far giving you the most options. Includes a full video editor, much more easier to use. Allows you to combine multiple videos, add transition and text, almost like CapCut, almost like a full video editor. The DJI Studio is pretty good, but does need some work. It is a fairly basic video editor. You can color correct, add log profiles, add color profiles, but it is quite far behind the Insta360 Studio. The GoPro player for the Max 2 is very, very basic. This should only be used to process your 360 videos. You should then be using an external video editor like Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve to combine your videos to basically do anything else. This is becoming a super long video. Let's run through some of the other considerations, what we might think of when using these cameras. When it comes to battery life, looking at the specs, the Insta360 has the highest capacity battery, and I find it does last the longest. None of these cameras have amazing battery life. You're probably gonna have to bring a charger if you're using it all day and you expect to shoot hours of footage. All of these cameras are water resistant, waterproof. You can take them underwater up to around 5 to 10 meters. However, in the 360 mode, none of them will work well underwater. It's just how 360 videos work. The only way to get 360 video working well underwater is with a dive case. And at the moment, the X5 is the only one of these cameras with a dive case. And it works really, really well. You can create some really epic footage with 360 cameras and a dive case. But so far, the X5, the only one able to do that. Okay guys, let's quickly summarize what I've discovered with these cameras. Let's start with the GoPro Max 2. I think this camera would be perfect if you are going skiing, if you're doing any kind of winter sports or cycling in the summer, off-road cycling. You want to record those kind of action shots. Those kinds of sports where you're shooting in daylight in good conditions and it's action heavy. There's a chance you might damage your camera. The GoPro Max 2 definitely has the best action camera credentials with its user replaceable lenses. The GoPro ecosystem with the dozens of mounts and accessories are already available. I think the Max 2 would be great for those kind of shots, but it obviously completely collapses when it comes to any low light night shooting. Don't even bother. Also, the true 8K, while it does technically matter, it is true that it has more pixels, doesn't really matter that much, and the smaller sensors are definitely a payoff, a sacrifice, I should say, for being able to replace those lenses so quickly. The DJI Osmo 360 is definitely shooting the best quality videos and photos overall, certainly the sharpest, certainly the best in terms of details, sharpness. If that's something that you really care about, then the DJI is going to be the best for you. I would struggle to use this as a serious action camera just because I would worry about dropping it, about scratching the lenses. It is actually the lightest, and certainly it's compact enough to be able to use as an action camera. Just if you're going to use it as an action camera, be careful, but if you do, it's probably going to shoot the highest quality video overall. Also, I love that it has internal memory and the editing software it comes with, but not the best, but not bad, and certainly the easiest to learn. And finally, the X5, Insta360 have had the longest time to develop an ecosystem for their 360 cameras, and it certainly shows. By far the best editing options, by far the best editing software, more video modes, certainly making most use of the 360 videos as it shoots. The hyperlapse options being one of my favorite ways to shoot with 360 cameras, and the X5 is by far the best way to shoot those. Despite being the oldest, still shooting pretty good quality 360 video, and I think probably the best in low light scenarios. But the lack of 10-bit does seem to age it somewhat. And it's certainly true that some of the pixels in the 8K are not actually being used in the final image, so GoPro has them beat there. So there we go, guys. That's my comparison of these three cameras. You're probably going to ask me, well, which one should I buy? I mean, it's really hard to tell you that for sure unless I know exactly what you want. For action shots in daytime, I think the GoPro Max would be best. For more vlog kind of style or for 360 immersive videos, then I think the DJI would be best in terms of quality. And to create the kind of unique shots that you can get with 360 cameras, the kind of shots that you see on Instagram, the kind of unique trick shots, easily. So for that, I would get the X5. There's always going to be a trade-off. There certainly isn't one that does everything we want it to do. Maybe in the next generation, we can take some bits of each and create the perfect 360 camera for everything. So yeah, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think of these comparisons. Which one would you buy? Which one do you think looked the best in those comparisons? Let me know in the comments. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will see you next time. Bye.